you really have this schedule that works for you, but you remain full because, I mean, any parent knows that when mom has a bad day, everyone has a bad day.
Oh my gosh, Megan, I've had to put myself in timeout a few times during this
Oh,
quarantine
yeah.
where I'm like, it's my parent shift, and I am like, I'm the one having a tantrum, and I'm like, mommy's gonna walk away for just a minute. I'm gonna go put myself in timeout. I'll be back.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday. We all made it, right? I am so excited. We have Megan, and of course, she has the best name ever. Joining us and chatting about the new normal.
Oh,
Hey!
oh,
Hi!
she just dropped off my dinner. Say hi, Miles.
Oh.
Hi.
Hey, you are wonderful. How old
Yeah.
are you?
How old are you?
5.5.
She's 5 and
Five? Oh my goodness.
What do you know about the wedding industry?
That's fun.
Huh?
What do you know about the wedding industry?
Mm.
Not too much.
Did you know that they're Cinderellas and they wear really big dresses?
Mm-hmm.
And and they get to marry whoever they want to and have big parties, like
That's
balls.
right. Yep, that's right. All right, I'm gonna boot Molly out. Can you say bye, everybody?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks for dinner. Hey, Megan, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh my gosh, this is quarantine life with small children. It's kind of crazy.
I love it. That's hilarious. She's adorable, of course.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely adorable.
She has her adorable moments. We'll say that.
Oh my goodness. You know, it's definitely a whole new ball game from a lot of people working from home, homeschooling, stay-at-home mom, like 24/7 care for everyone. Like it's different. It's a totally different thing. And like
Well,
there's
yeah, I don't even.
not like you got a month to prep for it. It was like, boom, here we go.
No, and it feels like it's never ending, you know? Like, I think we're on, what day are we on of quarantine? Is it like day 70 or so? I stopped counting.
Do you know what's funny? Someone said something and they were like, oh, something like, well, it's been over 60 days. And I was like, no, it's what? And I was like, oh
Totally.
my, like, I can't even remember. It's just one big blur of, I don't know, but it's warm out. I know, right? Now that it's like warm out and like things are starting to open up, I'm like, okay, like things are, you kind of figure out what's going on, but I think it's still so different. I mean, are you guys under quarantine? Are you guys open? Like what phase? Or I mean, every state's different. So
I know, it's crazy. So I'm North Carolina, and we just moved into phase 2. So phase 2 for North Carolina means that there can be 10 people gathering within a building and 25 outside of a building. But the rules are really a little bit wonky because like restaurants can operate at 50% capacity, but venues cannot. So it's really been hard for venues here locally in North Carolina because they're like, what? Why are we not being held to the same standard as it's really confusing, to be honest.
So are venues not able to be open at all? Or can they be open like with like 10 people, or how does that work?
Yeah, so they can have 10 people inside, 25 outside.
So they have like 35 total and like they just rotate the people around?
Yeah, they could. And you know what's interesting is the actual wedding ceremony can be any number. Like wedding ceremony and funerals can be any number, but the reception can only be 10 inside, 25 outside, which is just
that doesn't make any sense.
so confusing. I know, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
So wait, like you can have like 500 people outside for ceremony, and then all of a sudden you're like, and only 10 of you get to come inside for cake.
Right. I'm like, do you do like time amount? Like you're 10:10, you at 10:20, you at 10:30. Luckily, we haven't had to go to that level quite yet. But yeah, it's very, all of our weddings. So here in North Carolina, peak season is April, May, June, September, October, November. And all of our April, May, Junes have moved. Yeah.
It's insane. Are people moving to like the July, August, even though it's like going to be crazy hot, or no?
So a lot of our early, like our March, Aprils, moved to August, September, like Sundays, Friday date availability, or they postponed to 2021. So it's kind of, it just depends on the size of the wedding. Like a lot of them are scaling down. So we've had to have these conversations with clients where it's like, let's talk about what your priorities are. So if your priorities are you want to get married now and you don't want to wait, then we should make a plan and move forward. If it's the party and having all of your friends and family together, then we may need to push back to a later date. But yeah, it's been obviously difficult conversations. I think with my planning company, we have relocated, I want to say last time I counted, it was like 14 weddings.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh. And so, I mean, now that things are open, like it's still so confusing to me because it's fascinating but confusing at the same time. And I don't know if that's because maybe I'm not, I should be, or maybe it's because everybody's like making the rules up, and I'm like, wait, didn't you just say? I'm so confused right now because like, okay, so I have 25. Does that count the couple and the officiant, or do they count? Because every state is different.
I know. That's the part that is mind-boggling to me, that it is like so different. Like you could drive 2 hours away from here and have totally different restrictions in Virginia or South Carolina. And I know because you're up in DC, right?
I'm in New York, so
right. Yeah. So same sort of, we're East Coast, but yeah, it's just totally different all across the board for sure.
Well, and it's interesting because I mean, we were talking to I forgot, it was someone from Chicago, and they were saying how, hey there, DW. They were saying how some people were saying like, oh, we'll just go to Indiana because they didn't have any restrictions. Like, we'll just go get married.
Yeah. Same thing with South Carolina. Yeah.
Like that just, it's so crazy to me. Like, I don't know. It just like that. Because it's like, okay, so you get married, but you know, it's not like these are just random laws that people are putting in place for like no reason. I mean, there's a reason for it.
I know. I've tried to say to all of our couples that there's a disclaimer, you know, when I talk to them, it's like, I am a planner, so I'm happy to help you come up with a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, but at the end of the day, I am not an infectious disease expert, and I have no control over what happens as far as what the government restrictions are. So that's been a hard thing to share, because it's like they're looking to us as wedding vendors to be the person that can solve all the problems, but I can't. Like, this is the first time in my career in 10 years that I've encountered problems that I can't, there's no immediate fix to. Yeah.
Right. I think it's probably one of the most frustrating things for wedding pros too, is because, you know, when you normally have all the answers as an expert, and people are looking to you for those answers as the expert, and you just like, you don't know. It's and so like what you have people who, I mean, because right now there's a lot of talk, and I mean, it's like totally overwhelming because on one end it's like all of this news all the time, half of it's just being recycled. Occasionally there's like a new thing here and there, and you're like, ooh, maybe you know that. I don't know. And so it's like it's all craziness sometimes, but you know, there's so many people who are now, you know, like infectious disease experts and, you know, scientists and doctors who are saying that the second wave is going to be worse, and like get ready for the fall and winter, which is like what Brazil is going through right now. I mean, are all of your fall weddings rescheduled well? Are you advising them? Like how, I guess at what point, given what you've experienced this spring, at what point are you going to be like, hey, I think that you guys should reschedule?
So the way that we're working it right now is I have found that if I let the client reach out to me, so we have a team, there's 4 of us on the team for a Southern Soiree planning weddings. And what we've put together as a team is that if we let the client reach out to us, it's not good. We need to be the one, obviously, establishing what the next steps are. So with all of our summer clients, we've said, here's what it looks like, here's what plan B could be. And we're doing a lot of research and communication on the back end before we even reach out to the client, so that we are able to say, like, we've talked to your vendor team, here's availability, here's where, here's some questions that, as I mentioned, like, what are your priorities? Is it that you definitely want to get married no matter what, you don't care what the guest count size is? Or is it that it's not going to be the wedding that you want if you don't have 100 plus people there? And that's where, with wedding industry vendors, I see that some vendors are struggling with what their role should be, because they're scared to make a recommendation and then be wrong. But if they are quiet, I think it provides, or it leads to another level of anxiety for the client. So for our fall weddings, what we've said is, okay, let's determine, if it's 10 people, you're good. If it needs to be more, let's move. But then having a date to circle back on. So we say, looks like the governor is going to be doing, right now, we know that phase 2 is proposed to end June 26th here in North Carolina. So we have check-in calls scheduled for our fall clients coming after that. So we know, okay, phase 3 looks like this is what the guest count looks like. And then we make a plan from there. But right now, our fall clients are still happening. Like, these events are still happening. It's just a matter of, we're working within like a 60 to 80 day window of when we're going to make that choice alongside them. And we say,
Right.
At the end of the day, we're happy to give a recommendation. We're happy to come up with that plan B, but it is your wedding and it is your choice, as long as it's within like a safe, it falls under the restrictions that we have.
And another thing that some pros are doing, are you having everyone, so all of your clients who are either rescheduling their wedding or having in the fall, are you having them re-sign agreements that contain COVID language?
Yes. Yeah. So we have that drafted with our attorney, just to let them know, like, this is what it will look like if we have to reschedule again, and just understanding what our role will be, should it be something where it comes to the safety of the vendor team, if we can be a part of the wedding. That's been the hard part. But what's interesting, Megan, is we're booking for 2021 and those clients are not mentioning anything about coronavirus. It's kind of crazy.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, we're booking full service clients for 2021 and we have something in our contract that has, like, should a global pandemic come, this is what it looks like from our side and what your side looks like. But they're okay with it. I don't know if you've heard that from vendors up in your market, but it's like, we get these inquiries and nothing is even mentioned about the pandemic. It's like they're planning for the future and that's not part of the script for them, because they don't see it as something that will affect their wedding.
I think that until we get to the fall and quote unquote second wave hits, whatever that is, that's going to determine how hysterical people get. Because to be, it's like, planning a wedding is hard and it's stressful, and being disappointed, I mean, I think it's one of those things that it's hard to take in. And so to have to think about that when you're planning, but it might not, I mean, there's a chance it might not be an issue.
I know.
I don't know. One of those things that like, there's no vaccine. We don't know all of the details of how it's communicated. What would make them think that it's not like, oh, it's just going to like disappear into thin air and it's not going to potentially be an issue, or you shouldn't be concerned about it when you're spending a lot of money planning.
Right.
I mean, and not just that, it's like, fine, maybe you're not concerned, but what about the 200 guests you're?
I know.
Do you think they're all?
And that's part of what I think is going to be interesting too, because a lot of these, like the inquiries that I see coming in, the guest counts are not small. I mean, we've had a few that have been more of what I deem and what I see as a future trend is those intimate weddings, but a lot of our inquiries say 200 people, 250 people for May of 2021. So in my mind, I don't know if it's a level of just maybe denial or just hope for the future that they believe that everything will disappear. I mean, I would love to live in that world. I would love to, and I hope that that's the case. But yeah, it's been interesting with vendors in our market. It's the same thing. The inquiries are coming in, but there's not a mention of the pandemic from these future couples.
That it's like, and it's one of those things like psychologically, how that kind of works. I mean, I was reading this article about how some people, are having a very difficult time navigating and like straddling the how optimistic do I want to be versus how realistic should I be? And am I in gloom pessimistic all the time and just say like worst case scenario, unprepared, or, people are obviously wanting to go about their lives. And so at what point, I mean, like at what point do we just all become hermits? Stay inside forever?
Yeah, I think that's a hard one. And I think for me, because as a planner, I have built my career on planning worst case scenarios, right? Like I know every scenario, everything that could happen, and I have a plan B, plan C, plan D for all of those things. And I joke sometimes that I'm a professional worrier. Like we are paid to think about everything that could happen and have a backup plan for it. But honestly, from a mental health and emotional health standpoint, I've found that is not sustainable. And so I need to work in small chunks of time, like for what the future looks like. It's like, okay, let me focus on the next 30 days and what I can control with my business and what I cannot control with my business. And then I'm aware of what could happen in the future. But I'm one of those people that used to check the news every day. Like I was reading the news, I wanted to know what the headlines were, and that was not serving me well. It really wasn't, especially with the multiple different opinions of all the different like case scenarios of what could happen. I found that was really unhealthy for me personally. Other people, maybe it helps them to know and to absorb a lot of knowledge, but I had to find my own filter to move into like the day after and the day after and the day after.
And I think that's totally. I think that's really key because a lot of people don't know their own threshold and what they need for that kind of mental balance. Because that's really what it is. And like, yeah, we can't bury your heads in the sand. It's not potentially an issue. Yeah. At the same time, be so overrun with worry because that wreaks havoc not only on your body. Stress levels are not good. Not good for your sleep, not good for your physical health. It's like certainly immune system in case you potentially did get something. It's like those are all things that we need to be aware of. But I definitely think that it's hard. It's hard for wedding professionals, and specifically, like, listen, I know it's hard for everyone, and I think like for restaurants, hard for entertainment businesses, it's hard for retail, it's hard. Weddings, I think the wedding industry is one of those things that we just felt like nothing could ever really happen where you're not going to be able to get married. And now it's like, no, really. And
I
like,
know.
like, can't, in some places it's like you still can't get a license. Like in New York right now, it's like,
Yeah.
apply for a license, but you have to have an appointment, and those appointments are like 4 months out. So you can't just like, oh, I think we're just going to get married now. You can't do that. So you would have to get a
Yeah.
license somewhere, and a lot of other places might not be open. And so those are things too, like talking to a lot of pros and some of the struggles that they've had for couples, really being able to advise them well when it comes to something like, okay, fine, we'll just get married and do a micro wedding. Well, sometimes that's not even happen. So before exploring the whole micro wedding, really figuring out what's viable. And like we were talking about, some places it's like, okay, the 10 people includes the couple, it includes the officiant, it includes the parents, like close to 10 people right there.
Yeah. Like, what does that look like? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really
So,
hard. And that's where
I
it's
think
like, you
that's
can't. Yeah.
so in
Sorry,
terms of kind of like with with the kind of the micro weddings and virtual weddings, have you gotten, so with your inquiries of 2021, those are not been really considering those options, right?
So my thought with the intimate and micro weddings is I think that, yes, I think that it will be a forced trend for the short term based on restrictions of where you're hosting your wedding. And then I do believe that it will be a long term in the form of like 18 months to 2 years, something that we will see more prevalent than we have in the past. So my thought with that is that, like, yes, we have to show up as a vendor and create some sort of package that speaks to that client, but you have to be really careful with that, because if you think, there's a lot of talk about micro weddings and intimate wedding packages and elopements, there's so many different names for them, I can't keep track, but you have to be careful about what package you offer there based on who your ideal client is before coronavirus and how you're going to serve them after. Because I think there's a possible trap that vendors could fall in where you hear everyone talking like micro weddings, intimate weddings, I have to have a package, I have to put something together. And you create something that is so far from your brand that it's doing you a disservice and it's doing your client a disservice, because it's not who you have typically marketed to or who you really should be working with. So I think that's one of the things that when with the Southern Soiree, when we started to consider like what type of package we were going to put together and who we wanted to market towards, I looked at who my ideal client was, and then I looked at how we could serve them differently for the short term, how long I wanted to offer this pitch for, how I was going to protect some of my peak dates for 2021 so I would be able to recover from the losses of, because a lot of our 2020 trying to find a way to still be able to service our ideal client that we have serviced a luxury package, and it still has the bells and whistles and the things that our clients typically are looking for, but it's just on a smaller scale. So they might be having a smaller guest count, but they're still doing all of the things that are important to them from a design standpoint. And for us, we didn't need to create a separate brand, which I have seen other industry vendors do, which I think is great. That speaks to what works for their business model. But for us, we said, okay, we're just going to create a special package that makes it easy and seamless for our client that wants something small, but still wants the idea of like something high end, high touch. Like, I guess touch could be something we don't want to talk too much about right now with social distancing, but having something luxury for them to offer. And that's where we've gone with it. To protect our calendar, though, what we have done is we've said this is something that we'll offer for all of, any remaining dates in 2020. We'll also offer it for off-peak months in our market, which would be January, February, March, July, August of next year. And then we offer it for like those off-peak Friday, Sunday, weekday dates, but we're protecting our Saturdays for peak season moving into 2021. So that's what works for us.
And that makes a lot of sense, I think, for a lot of pros who really want to know how to balance that, kind of working with the quote unquote new normal, and no one knows what it's going to look like, come 2021, and you don't want to sacrifice, your maximum revenue if you don't have to. So really figuring that out, I think, is, it's hard, but I think that's great. So like, if it's keeping the Saturdays and, and I mean, not so different from like a venue that has off-peak days, off-peak rates or package options versus a peak day or a peak, time of year. That might look different for different pros, for different locations, for different types, categories of vendors. So yeah, I think that's great. And so keeping that kind of high touch, not like without social distancing, the luxury aspect, how are some of the ways that you guys are going to be, continuing that, especially when it's like, trying to figure out, okay, what makes sense given if it's a micro wedding, smaller event. What are some of those things that are important that in the luxury aspect?
Yeah. So for us, part of what a client gets when they're booking us is vendor recommendations that are tailored to their style, their budget, and their personality. So when we put together that package, that was one of the things that we had at the front of our mind is how do we have this package, make it profitable, and also be able to support some of our vendor pros that we love and have worked with for years and years. And so what we have done is we've basically made it a closed list of vendors that we have reached out to them and said, okay, based on past pricing and off-peak dates, would this be in the ballpark of what your pricing would be for a wedding of 50 or less? And we've gotten their input. We've made it a closed list, but it still has some choice in there. And that's part of what keeps it luxury for our particular package that we've put together. One of the things that I didn't want to do, and I think I watched a webinar with Mike Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First, and I love this book, but he talked about what happens in a recession, that businesses start to make rash decisions because they see what's going on around them and they're fearful. And so their gut instinct says, like, I got to do something. I got to fix this quick. And I didn't want to do that and then find myself in a spot where I filled my calendar with bookings that are not going to pay my bills moving into 2021 or pay the salary of the team members that I have on board. So in the consulting that I've done with other vendors, that's been my recommendation, is that you have to like really identify for you, who do you want to serve? How long do you want to serve them for? And then how are you carving out this particular package, whatever vendor category you're in, so that it makes sense financially for you? That's the part that I think I would caution anyone that's working on putting a package together to ask yourself those questions for sure.
And I think it's important, because during a normal recession, it's just that everybody has less money, right? And they're not spending their money because they're coming up. This is a little different because I'd say, a decent amount of people are going to still be able to have income. Yes, obviously for the events industry, no. Or, restaurants, it's definitely lower, for certain aspects, but there are so many workarounds, and it's not that there's not a need or that people will pay for those services. So I think your point is
Right.
really important, because if people just look at this like, oh, it's a recession, what do I do in a recession? This is, let me just lower my rates, or, try to do something
I
to
know.
right now, instead of thinking like, okay, so
Yeah.
how am I going to be serving? And I mean, really, it comes down to the same way that you have a business, regardless. Like, you're going to be serving people. So who are you serving, and how are you serving them? And if you don't know who those people
Right.
are, problem, and it's a problem whether there's a recession or not, or a pandemic or not. That's the core problem. If
Right.
if it's not working.
Yeah, you don't want to make decisions based with fear as the first thing that you're making that decision. It's not going to be good or for the long term, honestly.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Are you
And so
there?
what have you
Oh,
been doing that's
yeah.
like encouraging and fun, and you're thankful for this quarantine time?
Oh my gosh. So I have found that with 3 kids at home, which is kind of crazy because my girls are 7, 5, and 2. So I've been balancing um, homeschooling, uh, managing a 2-year-old. We decided to get a puppy, which was really crazy. I don't know why we did that. I was like, the puppy will entertain the kids. This will be great. They'll have something to keep them busy. And he's really cute, but he's a pain in the butt. And yeah, my husband and I were both entrepreneurs. So we're both trying to grow our businesses and pour into them, but also be present with our kids. So what's worked for us is really just communication one. So we schedule every night before we go to bed. It's like, hey, what do you have going on? What do I have going on? We shift our hours of when we're working to make sure that like we each get time throughout the day for work. And then that person that is not working is hard for kids. But what I have found that I have to do just for me is I have to schedule like 30 minutes that are not work and not kids, whatever that needs to be, whether it is a walk with someone in my neighborhood, socially distanced, or I've really gotten into the Peloton app. I'm doing a lot of their workouts. I've started to try to do more meditation, which is something that I have not gotten into before, but all of these things are like pouring into me because I find on those days, if I don't find that time for me, I see that in how I show up for my team, for my husband, and for my kids. How about you?
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. I mean, I definitely I agree 1,000,000%. And it's one of the things, like my son, he's 17. I remember when he was 2 and
Yeah.
5 and 7, and it was the same thing. It was like, because there's no way that you can manage a tantrum from a 2-year-old if you're at your wit's end already. You know
Oh
what
my
I
gosh.
mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
things like, okay, mom, help me with this homework. I mean, this is like before we had to homeschool the world, but it was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to be helping you. Like, I can't try to help you and do this other thing at the same time and be on a, like, it was one of those things, like, figure out what that schedule looks like, and make sure that your cup is full. Like, you have to be full, so like
Yeah.
whether that's working, whether that's reading a book, going for a walk, talking to a friend, adult conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and communicating. I mean, whoever's helping you out, making sure that it's clear that, like, these are the things, I mean, planning it out, like, these are the things I need, so whether that's
Mm-hmm.
a family, or it's your spouse, or a friend, whoever it is, so that, again, you really have this schedule that works for you, but you remain full. Because, I mean, any parent knows that when mom has a bad day, everyone has a bad day.
Oh my gosh,
So,
Megan, I've had to put myself in timeout a few times during this
oh
quarantine
yeah.
where I'm like, it's my parent shift, and I am like, I'm the one having a tantrum, and I'm like, mommy's gonna walk away for just a minute. I'm gonna go put myself in timeout. I'll be back. Nobody follow me. And then yeah, those are the days where I'm like, dang it, I have not did not schedule like anything to be not work related and not kid related. So finding that time and remembering that like you have to give yourself grace too. That's one of the things that I have struggled with, because as a perfectionist and as a business owner, I want to do everything perfectly, but that's just not possible. Like it's just not possible right now. And it's been a good lesson for me, I think.
I think that's great. That's so important, really, in the wedding industry, because we work with people who have very high expectations and we are happy to meet them, right? And that's something that we pride ourselves on. I think that we can very easily turn that around on ourselves and be our own worst critic when it comes to how we handled something, or oh, that was, and not to say that I mean, clearly it's important to make sure that we can learn from our mistakes and grow, but at the same time, understanding, okay, I fell down. I need to dust myself off, maybe take a bath and a glass of wine, and then tomorrow is a new day, and I'm gonna hit it, and I'm gonna know exactly what I'm gonna do. This is where it fell off the rails, like, and this is what's not gonna.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
I
awesome.
think forgiveness of yourself, and honestly acknowledging, because have you ever found sitting in front of, let's say you're sitting in front of your computer, you have this long list of things that you need to do, emails, tasks, and you start doing them, and you get that feeling like you're moving through drying concrete to try to get them done. Like it's just not working out for you. I have learned, I used to like push through that and be like, why is this taking me so long? Like, okay, this is probably time to shut my laptop and pour myself a glass of wine and call it a day, and let my little Enneagram 3 achiever heart go and just relax. Yeah.
So funny. Well, many moons ago, decades ago, I was CFO of a hedge fund, and I was working on some spreadsheets, and for whatever reason I could not think, like something wasn't computing, and I was like, what is wrong? And my, well, you just need to invert, and I'm like, no, but that's not. And they're like, I think you need to go maybe take a lunch break. You probably are hungry. Come back to it. I come back and I was like, oh my goodness, what was I doing?
I know.
Like my brain was just like literally like off. Like it was just off. And I was like, I can do
that's
this.
Like a lesson.
No, that just wasn't, not what you should. Like if your body, it's listening to your body. I mean, we tell our kids this all the time, right? Like, listen to your body. Do you need to go to the bathroom? Like,
I know, right?
like listen to your body.
Oh my God, if I had $1 for every time I said that.
Yeah, right? Well, right now my brain's telling me that I need to take a break. And I think sometimes we forget too that your brain can do and go and learn only so much. And just like how we have to repower, like we have to turn our phones off, we got to plug them in, we got to, our brains are not so different. Like we need that time to recharge. And if you're not recharging, you're like literally empty, and pretty soon it's just going to be like a blackout.
Yeah, it's like that slow motion. It's time to shut down. And yeah, that's a reminder I think we all need, because we're home and we're thinking we got to make the most of this. We got to, be productive. We got to learn a new skill. There's a lot of things on social media that say like, with all this extra time, make sure you're making the most of it. And some people, I think that I'm just speaking for myself, but I am one of those people that wants to, do all the things and be good at everything. And I've learned in quarantine, one, that I will never homeschool my children. Once school opens back up, I am thrilled for them to go back. And I've learned like, okay, these are the things that I'm good at. These are the things that I need to accept. And these are the things that I really just have to let go. And that's been a positive. I'd say that's been a positive of quarantine.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. It was so good to hear how things are going, and I love your advice. I think it's really cool to start to open up, whether that's 10, 25, or 35 in total. Your state allows like be like, hey, there's only 25. Like, go inside. Yeah, like
no idea. No idea. Yeah,
I think it's great because like we are all in this together, and despite the fact that maybe our government officials are not communicating well enough with each other for our one industry, it's like we should be communicating, because it's like we can get stuff done, like, but if we can figure out like, okay, this is
true.
Really, like let them do their thing, like as long as we're not breaking the law and we're keeping people safe, we can plan a good party.
I know, seriously. Just let us get back to work in some sense of normalcy.
Right. Awesome. Well, have a wonderful evening, and it was so great to have on as well.
Yay! Thanks, Megan. I really appreciate it. I love that you're doing this. It's good to have these conversations.
Oh, thanks so much. Well, have a great night. If you want to connect with Megan, not me, Megan, that Megan below me. If you want to connect with Megan, she's so it's at A Southern Soiree, and also she has a wonderful app called Weddings Podcast. So is it real podcast, or is it at Weddings for Real?
Yep, it's at Weddings for Real.
It's at Weddings for Real. So it's a podcast, but if you're following the podcast on Instagram, it's just at Weddings for Real. Awesome. Fantastic.